All right, it's 3 o'clock. We'll call our meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. Today's February 26th. This is our regular scheduled meeting, Hutchinson Utilities. Before we get started, are there any conflicts of interest that need to be declared by any of the commissioners today?
I have none.
None? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 2 is to approve the consent agenda, approve the minutes, and ratify the payment of bills.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Motion by Don, second by Troy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 3 is to approve the financial statements.
I'll start. I don't have a ton. You'll notice on the electric division, there was an improvement of about 210,000. Part of that's usage was up. It was definitely colder this year compared to last. You do see a note that the industrial is down, but part of that is due to 32 days of meters. We're red in 25 versus 33. We do still read those manually. So it kind of depends on the day. Wanted to mention on purchase power, you'll see it was up. You'll notice the MRES kicked in, so that was almost 40,000. And then we did purchase more this year, even though the cost was less per megawatt hour. So that increased by 34,000 total. By purchasing more, we generated less. So that's part of why the generation fuels are way down. Because our sales for resale were also down, so we just generated a lot less this year compared to last. And on the gas side, everything was pretty similar, actually, most within $300 bottom line of last year.
I don't think you see that all that often, do you?
No, I had to do a double take. I was like, it's the same numbers that came in here?
That's all I have.
Just a couple of things I was just going to mention. The last note on the electric side, we pulled, so I added a new note in there, and Jared and I would just kind of keep putting that in with some of the new commissioners, but we pulled $140,000 out of the rate stabilization fund on the electric division side for the month of January. And why that's important is now, if you look back at the balance sheet, our rate stabilization fund is below $400,000. So our rate stabilization fund on the electric side, the minimum amount that we should have in there is $400,000, and the maximum is $1.2 million. When we're in that range, any of our power supply costs above $54 a megawatt, we use money out of that rate stabilization fund to offset those increased power supply costs for the month. But when the dollar value or the balance in that fund goes below $400,000, any power supply costs above $54 a megawatt in a month would then be charged the power cost adjustment to the customers. So we use that rate stabilization fund to keep the retail rates stable and use that money depending on different times of the year when the power supply costs are either above $54 or below $54. If power cost supply is below $54, then we take the difference between the $54 and let's say it was $48 for the month. The difference between that we add back into the rate stabilization fund and keep that money for when the power supply costs are above that. So we use that to keep the rate stable versus having retail rates going up and down each month. So that's important to mention. We did take a big piece out. So if we go into February and our power supply costs are above $54 a megawatt at the end of the month, there will be a power cost adjustment on the customer's bill. So it's just important to keep in mind. On the flip side, on the gas side, we have the same type of rate stabilization fund. The threshold for that is $200,000 on the low end and $600,000 on the high end. So if you look at the balance sheet for the fuel on the natural gas side, we're above $600,000 in that fund. So that's why we're giving credits back now. And I anticipate us giving back a lot of credits this year because our fixed price of gas now in 2025 for the majority of our volume is $4.08. And it was $4.53 last year, so we're saving 45 cents a decatherm. So I anticipate a lot of our gas costs will be below the benchmark, which is $5.25 an MCF on that side. Because a lot of the spot market gas that we're buying is usually in that upper 3 range, so that's still below that. So if you recall in the 2025 budget, I think I have about $900,000 in credits going back this year, and so we've already, just for January, we've given back $183,000 already for the month, so we're giving back excess dollars that we don't need to collect. So just wanted to point that out. Even despite we had, over the Martin Luther King holiday, we had that 4-day week and there was really cold, and actually the spot market gas was over $11. So even with some increased cost that we had because we ended up having to use more gas than most of our base load nomination. We still were able to blend it on the rest of the month because it was $3.66 on average the rest of the month. So we were still able to blend on those high 4 days and still keep it well below our benchmark of 525. So otherwise, things look pretty good, but as far as the balance sheet is concerned, and then obviously in the designation report, we'll be talking about that with cash flow models. But if you look at the electric division, we're below our cash balance in that fund. That should be enough to cover our reserves. And obviously, you guys are aware we've spent a lot of money on the electric division to buy the new generator, and then almost a couple $1 million on the substation project already. So we've spent a little over $6 million out of that fund. So I'll be getting you guys the cash flow models here and probably tomorrow, so you can kind of see where we're at, and then we'll start having some conversations about where do we want to go as far as the next couple of years. So that's all I really had, and then I've touched on in the past on the investment funds. We know we're keeping our investments short right now for liquidity purposes in case you guys want to just use cash balance for a lot of the project. A lot of that's coming in, and we won't reinvest it until I hear something different from you guys that you want to do something different. So I'll be watching for an email coming out here in the next day or two at the latest on the revised cash flow models and revised ATR revenue recapture that we're going to get. Now this project's around 14.4 million versus the 10 we originally talked about. So that will increase our revenue recapture back as well. So any questions on the financials? Kind of a lot of quick stuff, but just wanted to highlight those rate stabilization funds and things. Otherwise, we're tracking above last year so far.
Sounds good, Jeremy. Thank you. Any other things, guys?
Nope.
No.
Questions from me? Motion to approve.
Motion by Troy,
I'll second.
second by Don. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 4 is open forum. I don't see any new guests today. We'll move on to item 5 in communication. State Administrator.
Not a whole lot. We're getting ready for the spring, so with our street projects and dealing with potentially a lot of development, mainly in the housing side, but kind of wait and see. So
Divisions. Anything, Dan?
We had a problem with the Hutchinson, or sorry, McLeod sub cap bank. I don't know if you recall, that was installed in 2021. It faulted. It was in November, I think it was early November. Siemens is a manufacturer. They agreed to bring it back under warranty and take a look at it. So we sent that back in November, and now they recently said we were expecting it to get it back and get it back in the service. I said, well, we want to see the other two. It's broken into 3 phases, and we sent the one phase that it failed back. Now they want the other 2 sent back. So it's a drawn out process, and it's large equipment, so it's not like something you can just send us 3 new ones. And so we're going to be doing that next week, is sending the other 2 poles back. And it doesn't affect us so much as it does Great River and keeping the voltage up in this area, but which is the reason that it was installed back then. But just wanted to bring you guys up to date that there's some things going on there, but it should be covered under warranty. They admitted they found the problem, why it failed, and that's why they want to send the other 2 to make sure they won't fail. But so that's one of the things we're working on.
Sure.
I have
Dave?
nothing today.
Mike?
Just mentioned the audit is going on schedule, so hopefully by next month I'll be here, hopefully to do that. Everything seems to be going fine. That's all I have.
Legal. Angie, anything today?
I am just working on the natural gas manager position, hoping to have all the interviews scheduled next week. So we can get that finalized.
Good.
Wonderful.
Were there quite a few more?
No.
Wasn't that the one we tried to fill?
Yes, we did receive less.
Okay.
Yeah. Last time was 11, so
What did we get this time?
7, 8. So.
All we need is one qualified.
Right.
Just need one.
Exactly.
All right, thank you, Angie.
You're welcome.
General Manager.
Just a couple updates. I had sent you guys a business update too. Working through a second prepaid deal. So we've had some additional conversations this week with JP Morgan, and now we'll look to set up a call with the industrial load south of us to make sure they're all on board, and hopefully anticipating trying to get something done by this summer. The markets are really good right now between the spreads, so they've been seeing 50, 60 cent on discounts on natural gas. So I think we're going to be looking for that 40 to 50 if we can achieve something like that, and the market stay viable. We'd look to do that. So that would also be something positive. That would also reduce some of our natural gas costs. That would help on the credit side of things. So we're working through some of that. I would anticipate some documents if we keep moving forward over the next several months. We'll be coming in front of you guys to provide some information or some approval process like we did with the peak deal this last summer. So working through that. Started some general conversations with New Ulm. Their contract for capacity on the pipeline is done at the end of March of 2026, so we're a year out from that. So I've been talking with Chris down in New Ulm, so we're going to start looking at the contract and start working through what that looks like moving forward. Obviously, the old contract had different players involved with Heartland Corn and Fairfax, so that one is not going to be extended. We're going to have to restructure a new contract with just New Ulm and most likely Fairfax involved, but we'll work through that over the next few months. Bring back something to you sometime this year. I know they're going to want it sooner than later. I think they're going to start their budgeting for 2026 in the next few months. So they're going to want to know really what the cost impact is going to be for them as they start putting together their operating budget down there. So working through that piece. APA's Public Power Week is this week in DC. So 66 people from Minnesota went out to DC to talk about federal legislation on the energy side of things. So we'll get a report back next week on that. One of their big, obviously, conversation points is the tax-exempt financing. There's some bills going out there right now. There's, I think, a couple bills going to be proposed to bring back advanced refunding tax exemption as well. So that's been out there in the docket. But we'll get a recap next week, and I'll give you guys a kind of a recap of the federal report, how things are going out there at this point. Working on just a general project for RNG, renewable natural gas. There's a company that's looking to produce RNG down south, and they're wondering if we'd have the ability to put some of that on our transmission line and service that down in the southern part of the state. So we're starting to look at a little bit of that and see if there's something that would work logistically to blend some RNG into our gas pipeline, and really what the composition of that gas would need to be to make sure it isn't interfering with our quality of gas upstream. So I was starting to work through that. I was hoping we'd have a gas manager on to kind of take on some of that, but they're starting to get to a point where they're getting all their funding in place, and we're going to start piloting that down there. So I'll work with them as much as I can until someone gets on. And then just kind of been following the House filing 845, which is the net metering bill that's out there. And so there's a proposal by Representative again out of Wilmer to basically any excess power that's being generated by a solar array right now, if it's bought back by the utilities, it's at kind of this revenue number that we've talked about in the past. It's significantly higher than wholesale, but just below retail. He's proposing a bill that would still allow that to happen, but yet at a rate that's conducive for buying it back at more of a wholesale rate type of cost. So obviously there's a lot of opposition in the solar industry to buy that power back at that, and so we're kind of watching that. It did come off the committee on a vote of 8-7, so they were basically on bipartisan lines, for that. So we'll kind of watch that, but that would have it would have a little bit of an impact on us because we are buying some power back, but not to the extent that some other utilities are, or co-ops as well. So we'll kind of watch that as we move forward. And then Dave and I are meeting with Ron Meyer, the CEO of McLeod Co-op, tomorrow, just to introduce ourselves to him and meet with him and see how things are going down there. We went down and met with McLeod Co-op a couple weeks ago just to go through our territory agreements that we have. We haven't had really conversations with them in a while, and they've got new people down there, and so it was a good conversation. We got to tour their new facility, and so now and Ron couldn't make it at that time, so we're gonna meet with him tomorrow and just gonna share information and talk about the industry. So that's what's going on at this point.
All right. Legal?
Nothing today.
Sorry, Mark.
That's all right.
First meeting back. Policies. Looks like we have 2 to review and a whole lot of them to make changes to.
We do. There's quite a few, and I'm just kind of looking at maybe a group approval. The majority of them are all removing the word director from our policy, since we no longer have that structure here at Hutch Utilities, since we are posting the natural gas division manager position instead of director. So the majority of the policies are referencing taking out the word director. There's a couple of ones that have cleanup language as far as maybe adding a D behind a word. And then also, I noticed for me, there was like a HR director. Well, I changed that to be administrative HR coordinator. So just a few policy or cleanup language there. Do you have any questions on any of them?
Looks like on hiring, we're also deleting president of the commission, supposed to do
Yes.
reviews. You sure you don't want to do those?
I'm good. Hopefully we don't have to do that.
Looks like just cleanup that is normal, just verbiage change, nothing
Mhm.
as far as policy itself or anything like that.
Correct.
Correct, no substance changes to the
No.
policies, no, they're all still applicable.
So we can do a motion for all 13.
All of them together, yes, please.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Troy,
I will second that.
second by Don. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Policies are approved. Item 7, unfinished business. I don't think we have any of that. On item 8 is the approval of the 3M's natural gas transportation and daily swing supply agreement. Jeremy?
Yeah, so, thanks. So, it was a couple years ago, we started putting all of our contract customers in the city of Hutch on an annual cycle so that we could review these every year and make modifications if we needed to some of the pricing structures as we move forward. And that way, they were always coming up more current if we ended up changing things in our cost of service study results and the board approved different rate schedules versus waiting 5 years or a 10-year cycle to go through those things. So this is the one for 3M. We will have a couple more coming up in the next few months. HCI TDKs will be coming up, or Highland Park here in the not too distant, I think probably in March or April will be coming up. So 3M's is just approving the new commodity and transportation agreement. The only things I changed in here were the dates. So the same timeline, March through March, but instead of 2024, it's 2025 for the new current year. And then I did update the meter charge based on the approved rate schedules for those contract customers based on the cost of service study. So that went up to $761 a meter from $344 a meter. So that's the only thing that changed. If you recall on our cost of service study, the only things that changed with our contract customers is the meter charge. The demand charges stayed the same on the gas side, and so did kind of the commodity type of stuff. So transportation, distribution charges. So those were still applicable, and you can see those in there. We're still keeping them. The transmission charge to flow on the pipeline is 20 cents a decatherm, and then once it gets into our distribution system, they're being charged 27 cents a decatherm to transport across the infrastructure. Since they're not paying retail rates that cover a lot of the distribution transmission facility charges that we should be recovering, those are spelled out individually in the contract as that's your cost to transport your volumes. And then so based on their estimated volumes for next year, it'll be around $710,000 worth of revenue that we'll collect above and beyond the revenue we're just offsetting the commodities for. So we're buying the commodities and we're passing the cost to them, and they're paying us for the commodity side of things. So this would be what I would say would be our margin on that contract. Everything else stays the same otherwise. Everything else was still relevant to the contract.
All right.
What was that dollar amount compared to prior year?
So last year was about 685,000. So it is ticking up. A lot of most of it's the meter charge going up. So if it's going up $400 roughly a meter, and they got 5 meters, that's 2,000. So so that's and then obviously the pass-through based on volume. Last year their volume was down a little bit. We anticipate their volume to be a little bit more steady this year. So we may get a little margin on the transportation distribution charge if their volumes are a little bit higher. So we kind of missed the January and February of this month because volumes were super high for a lot of people, right? So, but
I'll make a motion to approve 3M's natural gas transportation and daily swing supply agreement.
I'll second.
Motion by Don, second by Troy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item 8B is to approve requisition 01028, generator testing units, generator testing for units 5, 6, and 7.
So every 5 years, it's required for us to do the testing of the generators to ensure that they are still operating within the manufacturer's specs. And then by us doing that, it helps with the insurability, and then with the premium discounts that we get through our insured, through the League of Minnesota Cities and stuff. So it's units 5, 6, and 7 are due this year. Sherco got the low bid, or the bid. So yeah, they'll be doing the testing. As long as you approve Rec 01028 for generator testing of units 5, 6, and 7.
Sure. Any questions from the commissioners?
Nope.
Have they done any testing for us before?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Seems pretty straightforward.
Make a motion to approve 010128 generator testing units 5, 6, and 7.
I'll second that.
Motion by Troy and second by Don. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion's approved. Item C is to approve requisition 010157, modifications to side stream filter plant 1 installation. Also Mike.
Definitely again. So this is a change order to actually a 2024 CapEx of the side stream filter and pump replacement project. So this issue didn't come up until 2025 because we didn't receive the side stream filter pot until January of 2025. So we actually didn't get it in and test it until earlier this month, and found out we had issues with how we installed it. So this is to fix how it's all tied into the system, because we don't have the way it's plumbed in, there's not constant head pressure on the side stream filter pot. So this will fix how it is plumbed into the system. So initially, we had, in 2024, we had $100,000 budgeted for the system, and we actually went over $18,360 for the initial install and purchase in 2024 in the CapEx. And then with this change order of $25,600 will actually bring us up to $143,960. So it'll be $43,960 over the initial project. So this $25,600 was not budgeted for 2025 for this change order. So I'll just adjust the CapEx for this year. So I'll just tweak on what I was planning on doing for this year in another area. It just won't happen, is I guess what I'm getting at. So, yeah,
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So was it not originally, did we receive a different part, or why? What was the
So
change?
we never had a side stream filter at that plant before, so we're adding it. And if the cooling tower isn't going over the top, we found that there's zero back pressure on the system at all.
Oh,
So we're not running water over the top unless the water's hot enough, which isn't hot enough if we're not running units. So, I mean, if the plant's not operating is when we want to be filtering water the most. So if we're not generating is when we want to be filtering water. And then we have no back pressure on the system to be forcing water through this filter. So then the filters will plug within 4 hours because there's nothing pushing water through this filter bank. So then we're just, there's no flow through it. So by us changing how we're gonna change it, then the pumps that we put in will actually be forcing water through the filter. So you can actually get a filter pressure differential through the filter, so,
That makes sense.
yeah.
All right. Do you care to make a motion for that?
Make a motion to approve 010031 modifications to size stream filter plant 1 installation.
So
Or
actually,
am I on the wrong one?
Yep, sorry.
No, they changed the number.
Yeah, we
It's
changed the
5.7.
number earlier
Oh,
today.
yeah.
Yep, okay. From that email.
Anybody got the new
Yeah.
number?
120157.
Make a motion to approve 010157.
Correct, yep.
Thank you.
motion by Troy, second by Don. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion's approved. Item 8D is to approve the Hutchinson substation construction contract. And that looks like that's Dan.
So at the last commission meeting, the commission awarded the contract for the construction of Hutchinson substation to Heidegger Wheat Lake. And since that time, we've acquired the performance bonds, certificates of insurance, and 3 signed copies of the contract. And so this month, we're just asking to formally enter into the contract with them and start moving forward with construction.
Have you reviewed the contract?
I have,
Thoughts?
no concerns.
Okay. That's my only question.
I assume you guys read it all.
I made it to
I
the
have.
end. I will make a motion to award the Hutchinson substation construction contract to
Motion by-
Heidegger Wheat Lake.
I'll second.
Motion by Don, second by Troy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion's approved. Last item, agenda item 9 is to adjourn. Unless there's anything else.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Don, second by Troy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.